Coming up on this week's episode of the podcast, we talk about all things Wrath as well. We come up with the latest news and current events in WoW, and we talk about the add-on of the week. All that and more coming right up. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our third podcast here at Tradechat Downunder. I'm, of course, the Wookiee. With me tonight, as always, my friend, my compatriot, and my sometime lover, Huge Bloke. Good evening.
Fuck the introductions. Let's make with the Arthas talk.
I am going to edit your Arthas remarks after the first 30 or so.
Right, so you'll be doing that in about 5 minutes' time.
And every time you say Arthas after a while, I'm going to refer to him simply as the poo-poo head. So,
we're going to be hearing that a few times then.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we said last week, this is going to be our Wrath podcast, based all things Wrath. Wrath of the Lich King, of course, being the third expansion we'll be getting to.
Arthas.
And the artist formerly known as the Prince of Lordareon. I'll be referring to...
Keeper of Souls.
The Wielder of Frostmourne. And various other titles that
Frostmourne makes me moist.
Well, just because you own a copy of it, that's...
It's not a copy, it's a original. It's the original Frostmourne.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I mean, it's not, but I'm going to keep telling myself that it is.
Pried out of the cold, dead hands of Bolvar Fordragon.
Yep, I sat down with my cheapest chips $2 glue and glued all the fragments back together.
Spoiler alert there too, if you haven't got to the end of Wrath yet.
And if you're not fucking nice, I'm coming over with it.
Anyway, but as always, we like to start the first segment off with the news. And
the news.
Huge has got some things to tell us about.
Yeah, there's been a couple of things that come to my attention this week. One of them in particular was brought to my attention by Dancing Crate from Garona servers. He's absolutely pissed that Call to Arms has been removed.
This was the double XP thing for Battlegrounds, right?
It wasn't so much double XP. Well, I don't really understand or know that much about it because, well, we all know that I don't really do PvP.
Well, Call to Arms, as I understand it, was the weekend. They'd have guys running around on the weekend who would, like NPCs originally, but later it was just something you queued for, and it gave you double XP in Battlegrounds, in certain Battlegrounds.
Yeah, in specific Battlegrounds for that weekend. Now, basically, what they've come out and said is that they found that Call to Arms was getting too server stacked. So if one faction in particular was dominating, they would instantly re-queue for that particular battleground, and whoever the losing faction were basically avoiding it like the plague. So they decided to take it out and rebalance it in that stead. Now, Dancing Crate in particular is like a massive fan of PvP, and he's also a solo player. So I can sort of understand why it makes it a little less enjoyable having to go through randoms all the time.
Have Blizzard said? Obviously, Blizzard said they've done that because of the server stacking. I wonder how prevalent that was.
Well, for them to take such a drastic sort of move with it, I'm under the impression that some of the servers were well and truly completely out of whack, especially on Battlegrounds weekends. Like I was saying, if one faction's winning in particular, it kind of makes sense to me. So, but moving on, one of the sneaky little changes, I think I only picked up on this one today. Active PvP flagging is going to be instituted in Warlords. So there will no longer be any baiting or accidental misclickings for people on PvE realms. So basically, what that means is that you manually have to go in and flag yourself for PvP. You can't just click and attack, or in most people cases, i.e. myself, click and misclick and attack. And it was basically to remove the ability of people, like if you're on Timeless Isle and trying to kill Hulon, and then someone will sit there and no doubtedly just be, chain lightning or whatever else, and if you die, they get the honourable kill. So it's designed to remove stupid shit like that.
Yep.
Um,
And evidently they took, like, you can't inadvertently heal someone and be flagged for PvP now, is that right?
yeah, exactly that, man. You can't pass out any free heals. Same token, if you're going to heal someone in PvP, you're going to have to get flagged, which is how it is now. But you can't accidentally do it. So same deal if you're doing like Celestials and one idiot is flagged for PvP and you heal them, you're not going to get flagged for PvP. It just means they don't get any heals.
Right.
Which personally I think is a much better way of doing it.
Sounds fair enough to me. I'm, again, not a PvP guy myself, though.
No, neither at all. Neither am I. So that's why most of the PvP changes sort of skip my radar. The one of the nice ones that's popped up was the changes to battle reses for raiding, and instead of being on a timed cooldown like they are now, they're going to be on a wipe cooldown, which I mean. I use them myself, obviously, like through rating and that, and I can see the concept of what they're going for now, and it should make things a little bit easier. So basically, what they're saying is, as take for example a druid. If you use your battle res, and then the raid wipes anyway, as soon as the raid wipes, your battle res is automatically finishes its cooldown. And can be used again on the next attempt. So,
I'm not sure I can. I'm not sure I personally support that though. Does seem to be another sign of the game easing up a little bit.
well, I find it amusing because a few people have said that they really are just sort of dumbing it down and making it even easier to raid now. And it goes hand in hand with another little gem that I found just today as well. Our dear friend Mr. Tom Chilton, has come out in another interview saying that their focus and their opinion now is that flex and looking for raid groups are more important than hardcore normal raids, hardcore or normal raids.
Yep.
Because of the aging demographic of the game. And, obviously people that are playing WoW and have been for a while have got a lot older now. They've got families and kids and whatever else. They don't have time for hardcore raiding. So Blizzard's answer to that was, we're just not going to devote as much time, and we are going to do things that make flex and looking for raid easier and more adaptable and things like that. So that sort of goes hand in hand with why they're making changes like the battle res and that. So
I think that makes sense when you consider that people that are still playing and have been, people like myself, we're playing at work or we're playing around work and social lives, family lives, whatever.
yeah.
So that does make a lot of sense, and it makes me wonder just how many people are in the same boat, that everyone that they're going to focus that kind of energy on it rather than the hardcore stuff.
Well, that's the impression that I'm getting is, for them to make that kind of move and for him to make that kind of statement. I mean, that's pretty bold. That's a pretty bold statement, and is a great risk of upsetting quite a lot of, the higher end hardcore raiding guilds.
But one wonders how many of those hardcore raiding guilds are still around now.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing. I honestly don't know, because ever since I left mine back in Wrath, I have no interest no knowledge. I don't look anything up. I don't follow any of them or any of the guild rankings or anything like that. So I genuinely have no idea of how many of these top-end guilds and raid teams still exist.
Because for me, I mean, I'm an LFR guy. LFR does it for me. It's I get in. There's always a queue. There's pretty much always a queue. You don't have to wait long. You get to see the bosses in action. You get to see the content. LFR for me is one of the biggest wins of recent WoW.
But it suits the purpose, doesn't it?
And I think Flex, to that extent, is also is the logical next step up from that. It takes the place where hardcore ratings should have been.
I'd go with that. Like, I think with the way things are going, just in my personal life, between work and family and friends and things like that, like I don't see myself devoting the same amount of time to raiding once Warlords comes out. So, I'm still getting my head around what raids what, but using the terminology that we have at the moment, like, I honestly think, doing the flex raids and then maybe progressing to, the other way around, looking for raid and then progressing to the flex raid equivalent, I have little to no interest in proper raiding again.
Yeah.
So
it's just so easy to get a bunch of people in queue for LFR.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. There's nothing stopping you from putting your own flex groups together, and that's what you see more often in. Well, yes, you'll see the heroic advertisements still go up in
good old Tradechat.
In Tradechat, but at the same time, you're seeing a lot of people advertising for people to fill spots in flex groups and things like that. No, I just think that it's possibly a sign that Blizzard knows that its player base is growing. Growing older, and you've got
shrinking in size and growing in age.
Well, that's it. I think you're going to get the more excitable youngsters. They're going to move on to the bigger and better things, but the people that enjoy certain the casual aspects of the game, they're going to stick around, and that's what Blizzard's aiming at for the next 10 years.
You remember last podcast I was talking about one of the add-ons that I've been using. OQ and how Blizzard are instituting their own version of it into Warlords. I think that's going to have a very positive effect on it as well. So not only do you have like the looking for raid and flex raids, whatever they're going to be called in Warlords, I can't remember right now. But then you've got a much more flexible, much more filterable sort of group way of putting a group together.
Well, a bit later on, we're going to talk about add-ons in particular, as part of what I want to talk about this week. But before we do that, have you got any more news for us?
The only one I'm still looking into, and I'll just sort of tip on it lightly, is I read somewhere today that while the garrisons are being tweaked and what bonuses and functions you get from them, one of the buildings you can have is a gem store, because basically all your professions are backed up by the buildings that you have in your garrison. But the gem store in particular, anyone can cut any gem in Warlords, but jewel crafters are the only people that can cut epic gems from the jewel store.
Okay. So
basically, the way I'm taking that is that depending on what buildings you will be able to have, the professions that back them, like that go with them. So gem store obviously is essentially a jewel crafter, but you will be limited to everything below epic level, which I think is kind of cool as well. It puts the emphasis on, if you're going to be a jewel crafter, you have to do all the work and get to the end just so you can have those epic mats, those epic recipes. But at the same time, you're not penalised for not being a jewel crafter. And that's across the board. That goes for like the logging house and a few other buildings as well. So, but outside of that, man, that pretty much wraps up the news. Or anything vaguely exciting from this week.
All right, just a reminder that we're 72 days out from Warlords of Draenor being released.
And that's horrifying considering how fucking buggy it is.
It is quite close, though.
I'm a little concerned by that, to be honest. Like, as anyone that's listened to the podcast knows, I've had the beta for a couple of weeks now, and yet I have spent probably half a day playing it because that's all I've been able to get access to. You can't log into it, you can't update it, you can't do a hell of a lot of things. I had to do a complete reinstall of it today, 26 gig download. Got the install done, and it locks up on the loading screen. If you go on the Warlords forums about it, there's a good 50 odd pages of people saying the same thing. So I'm kind of hoping that they get on well and truly on top of that with 70 days to go.
Alrighty, well, coming up, we're going to talk about our add-on of the week. And later on after that, we're going to talk about Wrath of the Lich King. Stay tuned.
Others.
My son, the day you were born, the very forests of Lordareon whispered the name Arthas.
We are, as I said earlier, we're going to talk about our add-ons today, just briefly, because it's not something we want to focus on entirely. I, of course, have been playing since before there really were add-ons in the game. You didn't have recount and things like that. You just had to guess how you were doing. It was quite interesting.
It was pretty easy back then, though. It was like if you died, you were doing something stupid, so fix it.
That's exactly it. So you had to watch your rage and all that sort of thing, and it was all fun.
You kind of had to take your cues from the bosses, didn't you?
Exactly.
Like if he started looking at you, you were probably doing a little bit too much.
So basically, the mods that I personally use, and I don't use much. I'm not really an add-on person, to be honest. And there are add-ons I should use. There are add-ons I should use. Basically, I'm down to recount, healbot, and the pretty much compulsory DBM these days. And I need to install a mail mod because I get a fair bit of mail. But Huge, you're my go-to expert on all things add-ons. What do you got?
Yeah, I hate to admit, man, but I really do have far too many add-ons. I just love playing around with them and seeing what different stuff does. And to fix your mail worries, try Easy Mail. 2 buttons to empty your entire mailbox. But I won't even begin to list off all the add-ons that I use, just because, like I said, I play around with that many different ones. I'll give you 2 though. Both of which I've come across really recently. One of them is Lost Treasure Check, which is a tiny little add-on. You can get it from Curse or WoW Matrix. And basically, while you're in a zone, you type /LTC, and it tells you whether or not you found the treasures in that zone that go towards the achievements. And if you haven't, you type in another command, and it gives you the waypoints to go do that. Using that add-on, it took me about 2 days to ding off all the lost treasure achievements. And then the other one, which I would highly recommend to just about everyone, is ACP, Add-on Control Management, or Add-on Control Panel, sorry. It sits on top, and basically when you press escape and bring up the menu, you have another button added on there saying add-ons, and it's just a real simple interface so that you can turn off or turn on different add-ons without having to log right out of the game. So there you go.
Okay, obviously you use stuff like Auctioneer and things like that as well?
I used to use Auctioneer. It was sort of giving me the shits a bit, and it can get really warped. if people jack prices or drop prices, it sort of throws the scanning out. So I changed over to Auctionator, which I found to be a lot quicker, a lot simpler. It scans the entire auction house in about 30 seconds, which Auctioneer used to fail at as well. But Auctionator I've been using for about 2 months now, and that's really quite solid. It's making life a lot easier and making life a hell of a lot easier on my bank turns and auction house hauls. So,
Okay.
But as time goes on and the podcast grows, keeps going, I'll rattle off a few more because there are plenty to mess around with.
I did kind of throw this on you at the last minute, so it's
yeah, you're just lucky that being in game, I can hit like I said, hit ACP and bring up all my add-ons and have a quick look.
That's right. So we're going to take one more quick break, and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about all things.
First.
We're getting close. We're going to talk about all things Wrath of the Lich King.
Can you feel it, my son? Closing in all around you. The light's justice has been awakened. The sins of the past have finally caught up.
And as promised, we're going to talk all things Wrath of the Lich King. Wrath, of course, being the second expansion in the game.
And the best one.
And I think many of us believe it was the best one. Huge definitely believes it was the best one.
I don't know, whatever gave you that impression.
He's going to talk about the artist formerly known as the Prince of Lordaeron a lot during this. I refuse to acknowledge him by name because Huge will do that enough for all of us bastard. In a moment. But it was an expansion that after what was a very half-hearted, it's probably not the right word for it, but it was lukewarmly received. Burning Crusade, and this brought us all back to the actual lore that we'd known through Warcraft 3 and set us back on what was a pretty fair path.
I think that's where the catch sort of came with it. Like, as I said last week with Burning Crusade, like they took the storyline of Illidan and tried to continue it on, at the end of Burning Crusade there. And I don't think they did as well as what I personally would have liked them to. So I know for me, man, like come the announcement of Wrath, I saw the trailer and I just went nuts over it. I'm like, this looks fucking awesome. But I had that deep reservation at the back of my head, just going, well, hopefully it's better than Burning Crusade. And luckily it paid off, like in spades and then some. Because, yeah, as we've well discussed, it's bulk up there on my favourites list.
Yes, and it's been fairly obvious for some time. What was your favourite part of the Quest series, though? I mean, Blizzard did say from the very start that you'd be very involved with the Lich King from the start, and you were. Like they really did.
Well, that's always been my favourite part of the expansion. Was it didn't matter what turn you were on, you had that involvement with Arthas from the get-go. Like, in every zone, you sort of come across him at least in some way, shape or form, to sort of pep you on and keep you, involved in the storyline all the way through it. And it built the anticipation, something shocking to Ice Crown. Like, even when you got to the level cap, like, all you wanted to do was just get in there and mash him and, like, get him back for all the bad shit he's done, sort of thing. So for me, like, that was the biggest thing, story-wise, for sure. And
obviously, hitting things like Wrathgate, a couple of levels in, and that was also very true to the story. It was probably your first real hit with Arthas, like the first real cutscene, I think, that had Arthas in it.
Well, it was the first cutscene, full stop, for WoW, that sort of had such a big impact. Like, I distinctly remember through the leveling process, people that got there before me were just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Like, I'm not gonna tell you what's happened, but just fucking, like, just couldn't talk properly, sort of thing. Like, they were just completely blown away by this sneaky cinematic that you had no way around. Like, you were gonna be involved in it.
So there was a lot to like. I mean, I wasn't really sold on the lore aspects of the starting zones, Borean Tundra and I can't remember the name of the other one.
Howling Fjord.
Thank you, Howling Fjord. And I wasn't overly sold on the Viking influence,
The Vrykul.
the Vrykul and whatever they were. I wasn't overly sold on that aspect of it, even though I understand that it was Northrend, and the whole Scandinavian influence on there had to play into it.
Kind of like someone at the office said, oh, let's go to Northrend, and little Jimmy in the back corner didn't have his fucking hearing aid turned on, and he's going, what's that? Northrend? And gone off and themed the entire fucking start zone around Vikings.
Yeah,
because that's how it felt to me. Like, you rocked up in Howling Fjord, and I was like, hey, we're in Viking country.
With no previous indication that Vikings were involved in the game.
No.
With the undead, at least you had heaps of it running around Strathholme and stuff like that. That was steeped in lore.
Yeah.
And really, I'm still amazed that not a bigger deal was made about it after the toing and froing over the inclusion of Draenei and Blood Elves in Burning Crusade, and the lore that had to be retrospectively fitted in.
I find it funny that WoW nerds will crack up over the most ridiculous shit, and that wasn't one of them.
Yeah, it was
it just doesn't make sense.
It was like, Norsemen, where the hell did they came from? And it was like, well,
it's funny because I did pick up on it, but like pretty much instantly. But I don't think I was bothered by it purely because I dig Vikings and Norse mythology and pretty much anything to do with Vikings. And
the Norse are fairly established in medieval type fantasy settings anyway, which is what WoW is. And so Tolkien did it with the dwarves, and they typically are associated ever since with dwarven cultures, which is probably what shocked us a little bit with this.
I think the funnier part is when you look at a lot of the names of like the townships and quest hubs and stuff like that scattered through the whole of Northrend. Like when you're in Icecrown, you can go to Jotunheim, and if you, I don't know, if anyone sat back and watched Thor recently, like those names are ripped directly from Norse history.
Oh, don't get me wrong, they did a very good job in terms of the names and the places and cultural settings of the Norse sagas.
It was almost like they didn't really try too hard to cover the fact that they were basically just ripping Norse mythology and Norse history to put into the game.
To the same effect, though. I mean, they have done similar in Pandaria, and to a lesser extent in Oldham.
Oldham's a whole different ballgame. But I don't see what drove that. Like, I get having pop references and pop culture and stuff in the game, but you either want people to be immersed in a fantasy world, or you want to have these little things that sort of take them out of it all the time.
By the same token, though, I mean, the Kaluak weren't exactly known in WoW lore either. And they're there, and the Tuscanar, or whatever they're called here.
I don't know.
Just
fuck those guys.
there's a lot of things that are different, and so you've got to give it the Cavall there as well.
Here's a random fact for you, and you just reminded me with the Tuscar. It's the Tuscar that have the dailies. The Kaluak as a faction. But if you go down and do their dailies, they're meant to be a fishing race and whatever else. There's a whole bunch of random NPCs standing by the water, supposedly fishing. Not one of them has an actual fishing line. They've all got fishing poles, but none of them have lines going into the water. That sitting there going, "Yeah, way to go!" Like they they went to all this effort to put a new race in for us to do dailies for, but then missed the most obvious of detail.
Yeah. So
that's Uncle Huge Bloke's random fun fact that has nothing to do with Arthur's.
So, would you say Wrathgate was your favourite questline, or did you have another questline in Wrath that was perhaps even more inspiring for you?
Bridenbad's quest in Ice Crown Man, and yep. I know I've spoken of that before. I never really had that full appreciation for it playing through the first time, but when the 5th anniversary came around and they did the Q&A with a lot of the staff and developers and designers and that, and you found out the backstory and the actual story that quest was basically tributing to.
Why don't you tell the listeners what you're talking about there?
Bridenbad's quest, I, for the amount of times I've played it and read it, I should know. One of the main engineers, I think it's Rich in Bridenbad. It's in honour to his brother, who sadly passed away from cancer, but had a pretty epic sort of battle with it. They spent a lot of time going to three different specialists who were meant to be, the best in the fields, and they did everything they could, and there were some signs of progress, and then obviously the ultimate sort of demise took hold. But he was a big player, big fan of WoW, and a lot of people at Blizzard knew him and were friends with him. Chris Metzen heard about what was going on and wanted to sort of pay tribute somehow, and they ended up coming up with what I deemed to be a pretty epic questline. That's sort of a really fitting tribute. So yeah, it works well. But what did you come up with?
I think for me, one of the quests at the very start involved Thessarian and his sister.
Yep.
That was pretty early on in the piece. Wrathgate stands on its own.
Yeah, see, Wrathgate's up there amongst mine, and that's the hard part.
It's not just Wrathgate though; it's the parts after it. And we talked about this earlier in an earlier podcast. But for those that could read the Draconic language early on, and there was a bug that allowed many people to do so that shouldn't have been able to, and you could tell that it was always going to end up like that. And spoilers are coming here, and if you haven't got past Wrath, I apologise. But
no, they should be apologising to you for not getting past Wrath.
But and so it turns out, and the cutscene makes it unclear whether Bolvar is alive, and you take his shield back, and basically it's not just Wrathgate; it's that whole invasion of Orgrimmar to kill the apothecary there. It's the whole confrontation with Thrall, and it ends in Ice Crown at the very end after you kill the Leech King, and he's still there. He's still alive, and he's been tormented, and the dragon's fire has kept him alive, even though he's basically burning to death without dying, type thing. So
yeah,
and then he turns out to be the Leech King in the end, because someone always has to be.
I loved the way that came around, and same sort of deal. Like, I mean, I kind of hate the question of like which was my favourite questline, because I had so many in Wrath that I just thought were fucking amazing, and that was definitely up there, man. Like to see that cinematic for the first time, and Bolvar comes out right, and we're like, wait, I will take that. There always must be one, and I shall be it. Just don't tell anyone that it's me, sort of thing.
Yeah, like no one can know.
Yeah, it's like, how fucking epic a hero do you want to get? He's like, he was kind of screwed anyway, because he was going to be,
and for me, he was
the Human Torch for the rest of his days. So,
and for me, he was the hero of the Leech King expansion.
Oh yeah,
he was absolutely like, you got to campaign around with Rin, and that was epic enough on its own, because before Wrath, Rin was pretty much just bumming around,
just fucking around doing.
He was just there, It's like you knew who he was, you knew what he did, But to be honest, unless you raided Stormwind, you didn't really get to see a lot of him in action.
Yeah.
It wasn't until after Wrath that he really became a driving force, and I wonder sometimes if Blizzard did that to counter the perception that the Horde had a more charismatic leader in Thrall, who was involved in things and did things and was, always moving.
I have never really been a big fan of Varian. He sort of, let's not go there. But anyway.
Well, I think his story alone is inspiring. We'll talk about that in later podcasts when we look at characters and things like that. Yeah. But I think for me, the hero of this expansion was definitely Bolvar, and I don't think enough is written about him in the lore.
Weren't you going to write a novel at one point, the secret journal of fucking?
It is one of my many missions in life to write a book about the life and times of Bolvar Fordragon. I think he's a criminally underrated player.
Well, to be honest, man, I think this is well overdue. You've been working on what? Chapter 1, paragraph 3 for about 5 years now?
That's right.
I if I was your publisher,
problem is every time I start writing, Blizzard retcon stuff, and all of a sudden the whole story's changed. But anyway, I do want to get around to that though. That is, he is massively underrated in WoW lore for a guy that ruled Stormwind in the absence of the king.
Yeah.
And had to deal with the rebellion of the rebellion of the Defius Mafia and all that sort of stuff. He had to deal with it all, and Onyxia. For
me, the hero of the expansion, man. I really don't have a hero in particular. I think if anything, the player was the hero. Which was part of the appeal of the expansion pack, was that you really were made to feel like an epic adventurer that just kicked ass and everybody looked up to, and I think that had a lot to do with the enjoyment of it. Like, you weren't just another little peasant sort of just banging your way through all the different zones and that. Like, if you finished all these quests in the first few zones, and then even by the time you get to like Zuldrak and that, they had heard of you and were hoping that someone of your status would come along, sort of thing. And so you really did feel like an epic character. Well, at least I did anyway.
Just on zones, what would have been your favourite zone in the game?
I think for me, pretty much all of them. But see, I told you, man. Ray's made an appearance this week. Probably Icecrown, for the most obvious reasons. It's the home of Icecrown Citadel. You had a mix of Vrykul there. You had a mix of history and lore. It's the home to the Bright and Bad quest. It ended up being having the addition of the Argent tournament, which, while I wasn't a big fan of, I did think it was kind of a bit of a novelty that it worked. But for me, it was definitely Icecrown. What were your thoughts? Because if I remember correctly, you tend to lean towards like Dragonblight and Sholzar, don't you?
Sholazar, I like the look of Sholazar, but and the Titan stuff that was there and everything else. But I think Grizzly Hills was one of my favourites.
Yeah, nice. That's not one that crops up too often.
It's a pain to quest in at times, and especially if you're trying to do the escape from the Worgen guys which just
on the cart.
No, this is the one where you ride the horse out and you get screwed over. Just
yeah. Yeah, now I'm with you.
And you're just like, what the? and in the end, I didn't do it on so many characters because of it.
Yeah.
But it was just such a pretty zone. The quests you started was the first time you met Drakaru, who you end up doing quests for in Zuldrak.
Here we go. Oh, nice one. Well done.
And you had the starting of the furbolgs as well, and the previous great tree which they cut down and stuff like that. So you had all of that, and
it was a good mix.
It was a well designed zone. The quests were good, and you can't really complain about.
Just while we're talking about favourite zones, Dancing Crate, who is a troll hunter on the Garona server, he having a bit of a chinwag to him, and his favourite zone is Shelzar. For the very simple reason of the Nessingwary quests, but more so the rare pets that were down there. Like, as a hunter, that place was, pretty ideal for him with the rares that you could get. So it was good to have that sort of insight from a class that up until recently I hadn't played, especially through Wrath.
I think as well, it was the first time that an entire zone in the game had been designed with trolls specifically in mind.
Yeah.
So it was the first time you really got a good look at like the Mayan architecture that they use for the trolls.
Yeah.
Which is quite funny given that they speak like Jamaicans but live like Mayans. Let's not get over the cultural.
Hang on, where the hell are you talking about?
Trolls.
Yeah, but where?
Zoldrak.
Yeah, I said Shelzar.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about Zoldrak. Settle down. Stay. And so Zoldrak, just
I did dig that. And again, like Dancing Crate, same deal. Like he's a self-proclaimed troll fanboy, whore, whatever you want to call him. He'll be loving this because I know he's listening to the podcast when we put it out. But that's why he's like his top dungeon was Gundrak, because it was so troll orientated in a troll specific zone. So I think for him, having all those mobs everywhere and all that story everywhere that was directly relating to his class, which up until then had been a while since we'd had that sort of interaction with trolls.
So what was your favourite dungeon then?
I kind of dig Culling of Stratholme.
Yeah.
Purely because of the interaction there with Arthas, because if you follow his story in particular, that was such a key turning point for him down a dark path. And having read it and seen bits and sort of it being alluded to in the Frozen Throne expansion pack for Warcraft 3. To actually be able to go in and not just witness it, but to technically be a part of that massacre, like, that was fucking awesome to be a part of such a key point. Like, it wasn't awesome that we took part in a massacre, but to be part of such a specific and momentous sort of a occasion, I mean, that was just awesome. So,
yeah. I was never a fan of the Caldera, like the ones around
the Nexus and
the
that.
Nexus and those. Stuff in there just annoyed me in the end.
Yeah. If I was going to hate on any of the dungeons in Wrath, that would definitely be up there.
I don't think apparently I just got kicked out of Wintergrasp. I don't think I had a real favourite.
I mean, it's like the questing sort of thing. Like, I have ones that I like more, but I really struggled to find quests and zones and characters and things like that I didn't like.
Yeah, there was nothing other than those ones in the Nexus.
Yeah, like I still enjoyed them for the minutest part of the story that came through them, but I think I just didn't enjoy them as much because it was very hard to get a good group for them.
Yeah,
at the time. And it was just so easy to cock up in there.
no one wanted to do it, especially the second dungeon in there, which the level 70 dungeon that I, for the life of me, can't remember. But it was universally hated. Oculus, no one wanted to do it.
Yeah,
and Oculus was single-handedly responsible for the inclusion of the adventurers bags, the reward stuff that you now get. Like that was Oculus because people just wouldn't go.
Yeah,
and now you can get them for dungeons all over the place if you're depending on the needs.
It was funny because Wrath was the introduction. I'm going to coin that phrase. It was the introduction of Dungeon Finder.
Yeah.
And I remember that pinging off, and as soon as it came up with pretty much anything revolving around the Nexus, like be it the Nexus or the Oculus instances, you just you couldn't help but groan about it. It was like, fuck, not this again.
Yeah.
And again, going back to my conversation with Dancing Crate, like that was his sort of big enjoyment factor for Wrath itself was the introduction of Dungeon Finder, because, like I was saying earlier, like he's a solo player. He sort of come unstuck, like so many of us have, by joining the opposite faction to most of his friends. So being a solo player and not necessarily being online for guild runs and things, like it was really hard to get runs. And he was cheering that Dungeon Finder came in because it meant that he could still experience all these raids and runs and not raids, but all these dungeons the way they should be.
So what about raids then? I know your favourite raid. I don't even know why I've asked you.
Oh, it was definitely the addition of Onyxia at the end there. Yeah, for sure. Totes, man. And then it was seconded by
Trial of the
Grand
Crusader.
Yeah. Oh, that was fucking awesome. I just loved it. It. Best thing ever.
I think, I think hands down it's got to be Ice Crown, even for me. And I'm not the fanboy that you are of the artist formerly known as the Prince of Lordareon. But
or as some people call him, Prince Poo Poo Head.
Or Prince Poo Poo Head. But it all really culminated in Ice Crown. We all knew it was going to go there, but it wasn't the disappointment that went with it. That went with, say, the Illidan and Black Temple scenario.
I think the fact that you knew from the get-go, like if you knew anything about the story, or if you played Warcraft 3 at all, you knew before the expansion even came out that it was going to end up in Ice Crown. Like at some point you were going to be in Ice Crown.
Yeah.
Not necessarily raiding either. Like you had that expectation that
all roads led there.
Yeah, it didn't matter how, be it quest or raiding.
And it wasn't like Burning Crusade where you had Sunwell come after it. You know, you had fill-in entertainment come on afterward. Ice Crown was the pinnacle. It was the be-all.
They tacked, if I remember correctly, Argent Tournament came before Ice Crown.
It did. Everything came before it.
And that had that feeling of, hey, we're going to put this out to sort of keep you guys entertained for a little bit longer while we tweak Ice Crown. And I'm kind of glad they did, because the level of enjoyment that came out of it, and while we're continuing on fan favourites, having a conversation with Ajira, who's a good friend of ours, and on this server as well, on Amenthal, she said exactly the same thing. Like raiding in Wrath and raiding in Ice Crown was just the best experience ever. Like they really put the yards in. Hers was more so because of the guild that we had at the time, which Doghouse, which unfortunately met a untimely demise. The guild got stolen and sold off. But
right.
Everyone that was in that guild, like, we got along really well. We put the effort in, and we spent a lot of time in Ice Crown, and the rewards paid off.
Yep.
We all enjoyed the shit out of it. So
what did you think of Asjol Nera not really featuring as much as people would have liked in the expansion, like the spider world. People were hoping it would have been a zone. There was rumours it was going to be a zone, and in the end it ended up being pretty much 2 5-man dungeons.
Okay, yeah, it ended up quite literally being a couple of shitty dungeons, and
a guy who was a fairly major player in Anabrecken, he was basically a 5-man moss.
It did get tacked on in Argent Tournament, in the bottom of the raid there.
Yeah.
And same sort of thing, like, it was just so underdone. Like, I still think that most people wouldn't even realise how much of a sort of mainstay character that good old Nubby Cakes was or is. So
what about Nax? Nax was a controversial one when it was included at the very start. Blizzard basically said that 3/10 of people, 3/10 of bugger all people actually saw the raid, because to get the gear to do Nax, you had to clear through AQ40, and a lot of people never did that.
I see. For me, like, I saw Nax first time round. I think the fact that they did that for that reason, so that people would see it. And they didn't just bolt it on, like, they made it fit with what was going on in that part of Dragonblight, and really melded it into the story quite nicely. And I'm glad they did, because just like Ice Cream Man, like, the amount of time and effort and guild runs and shit that were put into Nax runs, fucking patchwork, man. The amount of wipes on that dude.
I think as well, the raids, like, if you look at things like Malagos, where you had to climb onto stuff, and it was a different type of raid, and that was really your first non-Nax raid.
Yeah.
To do as part of the Glory of the Raider achievement.
Yep.
And then you went into Ulduar, where first up you had Flame Leviathan and the orbital pillars and all that.
Where you had to
crap.
use vehicles
and you had vehicles in a raid for the first time, really.
I remember the sheer enjoyment that came out, like, not even doing the damn raid. It was just getting into the expeditionary camp, and just like, woohoo! I'm going to see Ginger, and I'm going to trash the entire place. It was quite a comedy.
And then in Ice Crown you had the gunship and just
loot ship.
That's
right before about 3 or 4 times before you get to Arthur's.
Yeah, so
we should have actually put a drinking game on this.
We should have. I'd be very drunk.
For every time I say Arthur's, you have to have a shot.
Much more drunk than I am now. But it was a good it was a good expansion, all up, I think.
Oh, dude, I well and truly, like, I mean, it's obvious because, as we keep saying, like, I'm such a fanboy of it, but I think the storyline overall was just so driven and involving. It was kind of hard not to enjoy it.
Yep.
And I am one of those people, like, if I see on the forums or some, a couple of the pages that I admin, the question comes up from time to time, like, what was your favourite X-Bag? And someone will say, Wrath, and someone else will be like, oh, I really didn't like Wrath. Wow! But why? What the hell's wrong with you? Like, get out! and I do take that time to ask them, and not for the sake of, basically being an asshole. Like, I genuinely want to hear other people's opinions on why they didn't like it, because I really just don't have the ability to understand how someone could not like it.
Yeah. So I mean, as a guild, well, not as a guild, but Tradechat Downunder, as a group, we are currently doing Wrath content in ICC, in Ulduar, in other places in Wrath at the moment to get achievements, and we did a stack of them tonight in 10-man hard mode in Ulduar. That's right. Yep. I said hard mode this time,
not hero mode.
So because there's a difference, really. But
boosts,
so we knocked off 13 or 14 achievements tonight. And we'll go.
I honestly lost track of how many we pinged off tonight. Like, it was an absolute stellar night for the tradies.
And so we'll probably go back and do some more next week, or we'll do ICC, or we'll rotate it around or something. I'm not entirely sure how we'll do that yet, but that's what we're doing. And so, if you're listening to this, and go visit the Tradechat Down Under Facebook page if you're not part of that already, and that's what we do. And in a moment, we're going to come back, we're going to talk about Tradechat stuff anyway.
Father, is it over? At long last. No king rules forever, my son. I see. Only darkness before me.
And we're back, and we're into the final segment. We're going to talk a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about what Tradechat Down Under as a group has been up to, and what we're going to get up to. And first off the bat, we did some raids tonight, as we said. We did raid Alduar. We got a lot of achievements knocked out. We did ICC last week. We didn't get as many achievements knocked out there, and had an awful lot of, shall we say, fun on Arthas. But and next week, we'll probably do one or both of those to finish off the achievements in that area. And we've discovered a few other achievements that we might chase as well, in terms of heroics in Pandaria.
I was going to interrupt you then, but I figured I'd wait for a second. But you just actually referred to Arthas as Arthas. So if you are playing the drinking game, that's a triple shot.
And so the other thing, now that I've been interrupted and my tangent has been stalled somewhat, is we're going to do a giveaway. We're going to do our first giveaway as Tradechat Down Under. It's big news. We haven't done this before, and we've waited until the third podcast to do this. But if you can tell us on Facebook, in the appropriate thread, what one of the two add-ons that Huge was talking about earlier in the podcast was about, and you can post that to Facebook, and we will select a winner from there.
What have we decided the prize was going to be? Because
it's going to be a pet. We're going to give away a pet. If you go to the Blizzard store, you can see the pets that they have available. And
apparently, my original idea of offering up Huge Bloke's services for an hour to aid your questing was not appropriate. Because I'd probably end up, ERPing in a fucking inn in Goldshire or something.
Your wife wouldn't accept your services for an hour, let alone anybody else.
No, but your mum would.
Well, she's dead, so thanks for that. I'm sure you'll have a nice time.
Hey, man, I told you, Wrath's my favourite X-Pack. Everything's dead.
And on that note, that brings us to the end. Thank you to everyone that came out with us this weekend.
Well, it's not quite the end.
No?
There's one little thing that we're forgetting. This week we managed to kick off Tradechat Down Under, the Guild Edition. As you would have seen on the page, we fired up the guild. We have Tradechat Down Under, a Horde guild on Darth Ramar. It's obviously in its infancy, and I tell you what, I'm none too proud of the tradies that have been giving us a hand there. They're kicking ass and chewing bubblegum. Everyone's helping each other out. The concept being it's a fresh start, so most people are starting with completely fresh tunes. So no one has any gold, any professions, any characters, anything like that. And we've all had to really work together just to get anything done. I mean, you yourself paid for my flying. People are chipping in for guild bank slots or bags. Everyone's helping each other out with their professions and things like that. It's an awesome feeling over there, and I'm absolutely McLovin it. So I think, before we sign off, well and truly, I would love to see more of our podcast fans that are on the Facebook page to, even if you have no intention of actually leveling a character, just start one up and come hang out with us in guild chat. On the same note, we got our vent server up and running the same night. So same deal there. You don't necessarily have to have a character, but come hang out in the vent channel and just have a bit of a giggle and see the tomfoolery that goes on when we're not talking about how awesome Arthas is. Because he is.
No, and big thanks to everyone that has come to Dathomir so far. If you do want to be part of the guild on Dathomir, and remember, it is a clean start. Most of us are low levels. I'm running around on a death knight for some reason.
Well, we both treated in that respect to get the sort of the head start. I think the reasoning there is justified, though. We wanted to give it a bit of kickstart, and really give the guild a bit of a kick in the pants and get it up and running, and so we don't have to stress about quite so much. I don't at this stage think we've got any intention of raiding or PvPing or any of that sort of shit. Like, I think it's just a leveling and, hey, do you want to go do this? Yeah, let's go do that.
Yeah, I think it's all very casual still. There's definitely no pressure on you to join. There's no pressure on you to do anything with this. Hell, we don't like pressure, so
I think the term for it that we've been using is that it's an alt guild. We don't want to take away from your mains on whatever servers they are on. But at the same time, if you're bored and there's no runs going on, or you just can't be asked doing anything in particular, like I said, come down, hang out, and just have a bit of a laugh.
Join us in Gent, where you can in Vent, where you can be insulted for stupidity like that.
How Freudian was that?
So
Christ, I hope that doesn't make it to the highlight reel.
All right, well, thank you very much for being part of it. Thanks very much again, Huge.
In honour of Wrath, instead of signing off with 5 points to Shamandor, I'm going to say 5 points to Arthasandor.
I'm going to say 5 points to whatever brain surgeon it's operating you in the future.
Oh, hopefully it's Arthas and he does it with Frostmourne. Seriously, like, if you haven't figured out by now, like, I have a total moist on for Arthas.
Well, here's something that we didn't cover. Literally, as we're signing off, what did you think about Arthas not being lootable? Not Arthas, Frostmourne not being lootable.
I was blindingly devastated by that. But at the same time, if they did it, I mean, only one class really would have been able to do it, which would be the Death Knights.
But I mean, they did it with Illidan's almost equally iconic.
The blades.
Blades.
To twin blades, yeah.
The Azeroth blades.
Yeah, I don't think many people put that much thought into it. Like, I think they were too busy on trying to get the getting Invincible to drop.
Yeah.
But oh man, if I could have looted Frostmourne in game, even if I had to do it as a Death Knight, like, that's what I'd still be doing right now if I didn't have it. But
Shadowmourne was a pretty piss poor replacement for it.
Yeah, it's not Frostmourne. Shut up.
All right, that's it. I'm going before we think of something else to talk about. Thank you very much. We'll see you all on Facebook and on Dathomir.
Peace out, homies.
Without its master's command, the restless scourge will become an even greater threat to this world. Control must be maintained. There must always be a Lich King.